Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the University of Illinois, and welcome to the Violence Prevention Task Force for the state of Illinois, chaired by Lashawn Ford. Give him a hand for chairing this. Okay, needless to say, and it would be an understatement to say we got a problem. It's called crime. It is from carjacking to shooting to retail robbery and on and on and on. People in the state and in our city, and I speak as a citizen, are afraid. Afraid to go to the store, afraid to leave your children at school. And this weekend, I was afraid to go shopping. Neiman is my store. I ain't going to Neiman this week. And we have analyzed, rich folks have given University of Chicago all kinds of money to analyze and study. So we know folks got problems when daddy's not in the household and mother is on dope, and on and on and on. We also see white boys, young white men, going to school to shoot them up. We don't hear about their mothers and fathers. We don't hear about their social conditions. We just see the result, and it's usually murder. It's gotta stop. It's gotta end. We cannot continue to live with this anxiety. We gotta do something about it. We are here today not to discuss the problem and the social conditions and the politics and the neighborhood. We are here today to talk about solutions. From a legislative perspective, we the people need to tell legislators what we want them to do. We pay them, we elect them. We the people need to tell these policemen where to be and what we would like. You can't take all these policemen and put them on Michigan Avenue and forget about Inglewood. We gotta do it right. And if anybody can get it right, it's Chicago and Illinois, and we have to do it. So that's why we're here today. I just wanna put that perspective in place to say we're going to talk to the experts, we're going to hear solutions, we're going to hear remedies. I have fallen in love with Eric Adams, who is about to be the second Black mayor of New York. I don't know if you all been watching him, but I've been on watch. He ain't married, y'all. I got a shot, okay? But here's the impressiveness about the future mayor of New York. After the primary, and he was on all of the talk shows, the national talk shows, and they were asking the wonderful, nice, polite questions. What are you going to do? How will it be? How will you change New York? You know, that type. And he would say, look, stop it. Don't ask me them silly questions. We got one problem. It's called crime. If I don't stop the crime in New York, Broadway don't matter. Nothing else matters. Not only will I stop it, I will give solution for it for others to follow. I intend to be a leader for it. I've been the black boy that the police bothered, and they shouldn't have, but I've been the policeman too. And now I'm the mayor. I will figure out how to stop this crime. And then he said, now the first thing we gotta do is you gotta pull up your pants. You gotta pull up your pants so you can get some respect and so we're not afraid of you. And he put billboard signs throughout New York to say, pull up your pants. Then he said, now I'm gonna be the fashion mayor because I'm in the fashion city of the world. Y'all won't see me in jeans. You will see me looking like the fashion mayor. You will be talking about what I wear. Now that just sounds like a good thing to do, doesn't it? So with that said, I'm through with my editorial comment. Let me introduce to you our chairman, and that is Lashawn Ford.
Thank you, Hermaine. Indigo, right? And I think I should say a nominee for an Emmy. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for all the work you've done over the years to get the news out and be fair with your message. So today we're here for a crime summit. I want to thank my our co-chair, Fran, from the south side of Chicago. Don't ever let anyone tell you that black and white people can't work together or south and west side. We got proof right here. So, and I got to tell you, I really, really enjoy working with Fran. We have a diverse thinking, but we share the same outcome that we're looking to have from co-chairing this task force, and that is to help people, And so thank you all for coming. We have a excellent panel of experts that's going to come before you and help us, because what our plan is to make sure that we are listening. This task force is really about making sure that we listen to the people that know best. That listen to the people that know best. Many times we hear finger pointing, and that's giving the criminals an opportunity to win because they see we don't have our acts together in government. And so I want to thank law enforcement. I'm no enemy, I'm a friend of yours, and let me just tell you, I was delayed today simply because I got subpoenaed because my car was stolen, and they found the person that stole my car. So thank you, police, Chicago police, for finding the person that stole my car, and I'm not exempt from this, and so they're gonna be waiting for me to come back to 26 in California. And the process is you have to say that that's the person or whatever, right? I don't know what I got to do, but I got to identify the person or say that I didn't give this person the right to have my car. So Chicago police, we look forward to working with you to make sure that you are able to do your job and give you the tools you need to be successful. This is about 15 years in the General Assembly, and I'm from the west side of Chicago. And in Austin, we are leading in the number of homicides, almost 800. And that's the community that I live in. I live right near the 290 Expressway. It's heroin highway. So everything, I feel it, I see it, and I'm afraid too. And I have to tell you, we have experts here. When we see the juveniles downtown Chicago, I see people crying for help. I don't see hoodlums. I actually see people that cry for help. I'm a teacher by profession, and one thing that we knew in our classroom, we knew that if there was a kid that got out of hand, that they needed help. And the best way to do it is to love them and to connect with them. And we don't want to put everything on the police to do that. Our goal is to bring people together like we have here with the Juvenile Detention Center, where they're going to talk to us about how we can help the young people, getting them on the right path. We're going to have people here. You're going to hear from Angela. Angela, I met her once, but her baby, 4-year-old baby, was shot in the head. And she's right there. And my life has changed so much because of baby MJ. And we cannot continue to sit idly by, not giving it all we got, because we take an oath of office to make sure that we provide for the safety of our constituents. And so that means that I'm open for whatever we need to do to help people, whether it's locking them up, but making sure when we lock them up that they have the reforms necessary to come back as productive citizens. So I could tell you to the police, you do your job, you lock them up, you send them to Cook County Jail, then we send them to prisons. The question is, what happens then? Are they reformed when they go to the prisons, or do they come back to the streets for you to rearrest them and send them back? We have to work together, and it's my hope that we put the examples on the table so that we can protect the health and safety of not only the men and women that's worried about their lives, but even those that's committing the crimes. They need help. And so I hope we hear something today, and the leaders from all levels of government could work together to help save lives in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. And my fantastic white lady chairperson, Fran Hurley, we embrace our ethnicity, and we want to be proud of who we are. I'm a Black man. Welcome, Fran Hurley, the white lady, to the podium.
And just, hi, I'm Fran Hurley, State Rep, 35th District. And just to keeping with tradition, Lashawn and I have sat next to each other on the House floor for 9 years. We greet each other. He says, hey, white lady. And I say, hey, Black man. And we get a lot of looks, but this is how we roll, and this is how we can actually approach this from the West Side and the South Side, because we can talk about things, we can ask each other questions. And this task force, the Violence Prevention Task Force that Speaker Welch set up, is a bipartisan task force, Republicans, Democrats, South Side, West Side, downstate. We're trying to get the voices from everybody, and we appreciate all the voices coming together to try to find a solution. Sean Joyce, commander of the 22nd District, is he's my constituent. Hopefully he votes for me. But he's from my district. We want to hear from the police. We also want to hear from the educators. We want to hear from the retail merchants. We want to hear from everybody trying to figure out how we can try to stop the violence. And it's not just in the city, it's in Carbondale too, it's in Goreville, it's in Rockford, it's all over. So it's not just a Chicago thing, it's not just a West Side, South Side thing, it's not a Black thing or a white thing, it's a thing that we need to address. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate the time, the effort. It's Monday, it's cold out. So we do appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get some great conversations to start this dialogue on violence prevention. And I do want to introduce the Queen of the General Assembly, Mary Flowers, and thank you.
The longest serving state representative in the Federal Senate.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I too would like to take this opportunity to thank Speaker Welch and Representative Ford for bringing forth this task force and having this hearing. It has been so long overdue. It seemed like it was just yesterday, but when I got a call from Harold Washington to come to the Illinois House of Representatives, I was on this campus. And back in those days, we had a few things going on here. The campus was very diverse. Education was accessible and it was affordable. We had a program called Career Awareness in the Healthcare Profession. I worked with then Ethel Caldwell, the late Ethel Caldwell, and Dr. Susan B. Lorenzo. It was my responsibility to go out and recruit the students. So It's my responsibility, so I'll recruit who I want. And so that's exactly what I did. When I went into the schools, I looked for two qualities. One was a D, and the other was an F. Because I knew that those children, if they never got an opportunity to be somebody or see something or be a part of something, I will be reading about them. They will be their parents or neighbor or community worst nightmare, only because we judge them. We judged them. We didn't judge what happened before they got there. And so I would challenge anyone to look up this program and see the success of the program. I just want to belabor the point for 1 minute, Representative Ford. During those days, it was the John Wayne Gacy days. And the coroner's office did not have enough photographers, did not have enough staff people. And they needed to identify the dental. So the School of Dentistry was overwhelmed. And my point in giving you this history, it was those students. It was those failing students. And they went to the coroner's office, they took pictures, they went to the crime scene, they took pictures. They did everything without a college degree, mind you, and they were failing students. But I said all of that to say, one of those failing students happened to be, if he's still there, the head mathematician over at the ag school. One of those failing students happened to have been one of the chief nurses at Cook County. So for the 36 years that I've been in office, I have been talking about this campus, both campuses, the medical side as well as the both of them is education, but we used to say medical, and what is the other? Well, that's what you all say now, but we had something else back in the day. So anyway, but my point in saying all of this, there's some angry young kids out here. You know, they used to be able to work at McDonald's. They used to be able to leave school with something tangible. That's a trade, that's an opportunity. I could quit one job and go next door and get another one. And so I'm not making any excuses. I'm very real about how we got here. I've been looking at, I'm past my retirement age, but I'm still here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to continue to be here fighting on this behalf and many others. I know the reason why we have so many kids in juvenile justice. I know the reason why we have so many children that's with DCFS. We have to take the profit out of both of them and start investing into the children. So with that being said, this is not my committee. This is Representative Ford and Representative Hurley. I would like to take this opportunity to bring one of the newest members to the podium, Representative LaPointe. She is such a pleasure to work with, and thank you all very much for listening.
Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here in person today to have a discussion about what undeniably is the most pressing issue facing our city, but also the entire state of Illinois. I am from the 19th House District, which is the far northwest side of Chicago, including Jefferson Park and Portage Park, and I think it's really important and symbolic that we have 4 members of the Illinois House today that represent different parts of the city. We all are here, and I bet there's some listening virtually, because we know that this is the most pressing issue, and it looks different depending on what neighborhood of the city of Chicago you are in. I am a former social worker, and I'm very excited to be here at my alma mater today, where I got my MSW, Jane Addams College of Social Work. Why it's so important we're here, many, many reasons, but this is an issue that's really heated, it's really politicized, And there are a lot of spaces where people are having unproductive, unhelpful conversations about what we should do to reduce gun violence in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. It's playing out in headlines in the Sun-Times and the Tribune. It's playing out on Facebook. And we all need to do a better job to create spaces where we can actually come together and hear each other and listen and hear about what each other's experiences are. That's why I'm here today. We have to be disciplined to work together on this issue, even though it's really heated. And I represent an area that has lots of current and retired Chicago police. I represent an area that's relatively safer, but I also represent an area where somebody was killed on Saturday night a few blocks from where I live, and I'm Facebook messaging with the aunt of the 19-year-old victim last night. So just to be very clear, this affects everyone. I look forward to listening. I will be listening for, with my social work background, what are the evidence-based practices we can employ to actually make an impact on this issue? I will be listening for what can we do better to actually support victims of crime and their families? And I know we have some of those here on the podium, and we all have a role to play in wrapping around victims to get people what they need so they can do their best to heal, so that cycle of violence isn't repeated. We hear a lot about community investment. I think we all know what that looks like at this moment in time. And I would like to say that we should keep talking about community investment. We should keep doing it because certain parts of our state, neighborhoods of Chicago, have never had access to quality education, jobs, healthcare. However, that can't be all we say at this moment in time because we've had a serious uptick in violent crime since March 2020. And it's important to level set and look at the data and where we are. So yes, let's talk about investing in communities because we've never done it to scale, but this moment calls for more. And so that's what I'm here to listen for and talk about. Thank you.
Can you all hear me? Shawn, I don't think it's on.
Yes, sir. You're good.
All right, so listen, let me, it's on? Hello? Okay. So let me kind of tell you how we're going to format our program today. I am going to call various folk up to the podium, and I ask if you will speak for 5 minutes. Our legislators are here, our policemen are here, and I want you to talk to them. Talk to them about your issues, but come up with a solution. That's the rule. You gotta have a remedy, you gotta have a solution. And we're going to let everyone speak. Please take your notes, as you should, and then we're going to have a Q&A. The microphone over there is the mic that we will be using. So our first person is going to be Cook County Medical Examiner, Dr. Cameron. Would you please join us? Am I right now?
She's here.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Paniyaran Kumar. I'm the Chief Medical Examiner at the Medical Examiner's Office. Over Thanksgiving weekend, we crossed 1,000 homicides in our office, a number that we've never seen for the last 27 years. Today, that number is at 1,026. What we're seeing is that we're seeing it 2 years ago in comparison, that number was 675. So we're seeing about a 40% increase in the number of homicides our office sees. Over the past few years, we always say we have been seeing more homicides than both New York and LA put together. And that trend is continuing. What we're seeing this year is that we see more homicides in the 10 to 19-year-old age group compared to last year. So last year we saw 113 homicides in this age group. This year so far we're seeing 144. So it seems like the younger population is being affected. We do put our data out on our Medical Examiner app on our website. It shows where these homicides occur, what ages the individuals are, and that can help, hopefully, in looking at trends. So this is a very serious topic, and we can work together to try to reduce the number of homicides. Again, as the first speaker said, yes, during the John Wayne Gacy days, we did have students from UIC School of Dentistry come in. We had the Flight 191 crash too, where they helped us with identifying victims. So thank you for helping us with that from this school. I will take any questions with regard to the numbers if anybody needs later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Angela Gregg is the mother and has had a crime experience she's going to share with us.
Thank you guys for having me here. She said, I'm Angela, I'm the mother of MJ. He was the 4-year-old that was shot and murdered over Labor Day weekend. So it's been, over 90 days since my son was murdered, and, I have listened to you all. You guys want to hear solutions. So, what I've done with the help of my friends and my family, we have, spoke to the lawmakers, we have spoke to the police officers, we have spoke to the parents in the community to see what can we do about gun violence as it pertains to children. And when we say children, we mean those tender age children of 12 and under. They are the most vulnerable in this city, and they are the most innocent in this city. So we're thinking of different ways to help them and to help them not be victims of gun violence. The last we checked, the numbers were devastating. More children have been shot in the city of Chicago than have died from gun violence across the nation. And that is a true pandemic to me. And it really didn't hit home until it happened to my son. So some of the solutions that we're trying to do to combat this, the first thing is I want to speak to the police officers, is we're thinking of implementing a SIU, a special investigation unit that is inside of each district. It's a team of detectives, a team of police officers, a team of parents that will go out and specifically work murders or gun violence against those tender age children. So we would definitely like to work with you guys more, hear your thoughts, hear your input to see how we can help make that official and make it something where people know. If you want to come to Illinois, if you want to come to the city of Chicago and you want to shoot a child, there will be a special investigation unit coming after you. So that's one of the solutions. That's one of the things we would like to see implemented. The second thing, as far as the lawmakers and the legislators that are here, we want to speak to you as well. And so that we really want you guys to get behind these judges and offer harsher sentencing. I know that right now we are looking for lesser sentencing, but when it comes to killing babies, there should be no protections. There should be no slack. If you kill a child in this state. So we do want to work with the legislators to, get some legislation, change the laws, because right now, with the numbers and how children are being treated when it comes to murders and gun violence, it's not fair that they're lumped into the same bucket as a drug dealer or a murderer. They should be treated differently, and they should be treated with respect, because no one else is able to speak up for them. So here, I'm definitely going to speak up for them, and I'm going to advocate for them if it's the last thing I do. And the last thing is that we are trying to work with the community. I'm not from here, I'm from Alabama. Me and MJ were up here visiting his father, who is a native of Chicago. And my son loves this city. His father loves this city. I love visiting the city. It's a beautiful city, but it's also the tale of two cities, So we're definitely, speaking to the community. I am seeing that underbelly side of Chicago, and in the community, they want help. They want to do something. They want to feel empowered to be able to take care of their children and protect their children. So we have started a nonprofit, and my son's name is called the Martyr for Justice Project, in short, the MJ Project. And the MJ Project, overall, it provides assistance to these families if your child is, if you unfortunately become a member of our club and your child is gunned down, whether it be injury or homicide. We definitely want to empower those parents to take back their streets, to, show them how to talk to the lawmakers, talk to the police officers, make changes and have their voice heard. They want to be heard and they want to be seen. So those are the things that we're working on. Those are the things that I hope that the community can come together and provide for these families. And I appreciate your time. And if there's any questions, you can
Thank you.
ask. Thank you.
Representative Ford, am I correct in saying that you just introduced a bill, legislation, where if someone, it's like if you shoot a policeman, there is another penalty? Have you not introduced a bill on legislation for if you shoot a child? Would you speak to that? Would you tell us about that? I mean, because she's absolutely right. There is no reason that a child, a 1-year-old, 4-year-old should be shot in this city. It's just stupid.
So working with Ms. Griggs, I think we should give her a big round of applause.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know that you could feel her pain, but we don't feel it exactly like she does. And like I said, now you know why my life will never be the same. Because one, I see the pictures of MJ and I work with the mom. She's telling me what to do. And what she wants us to do is consider putting babies in the same category as if you kill a police officer. It's a capital offense. And that's what she wants to discuss. And I think as a representative, it's my job to listen. Whether we like it or not, she's a taxpayer. She has a right to put her solutions on the table, and I stand with her for that. Thank you, Ms. Griggs.
Thank you. So now we want to hear from Elizabeth Garfield. She too is a mother that has had crime experience. Good morning.
Hi, it's Gerald.
Huh?
It's Gerald, not Garfield.
Gerald, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Excuse me, please, Elizabeth Gerald. I got it.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Rep. Ford, for having me here. I want to say about a couple of different things when it comes to the different bills. You know, when George Floyd happened, I was actually asked to come down to stand in solidarity with mothers from around the world, and I did. And what I seen was there's a high profile versus low profile, and it's only in our community. So the high profile mothers are kind of put on a pedestal, like Sandra Bland's mom, Tamir Rice's mom, Trayvon's mom. They're put on a pedestal. But the low profile moms, you don't really hear about them. And there's a lot of them in Chicago that you don't really hear about. So what I witnessed is that they were tearing each other up, cussing each other out, treating each other like crap instead of getting a sistership. So I kind of just left because, you know, I don't involve myself in that. I lost my daughter to suicide. My daughter took the bottle of Juvenile that was given to her as a result of being beaten and sexually assaulted. The man who assaulted her was not even supposed to be in my neighborhood. We live in Flossmoor. He was supposed to register at a halfway house, but he was able to go under the radar because I guess his parole officer, whatever it is, you know, wasn't even paying any attention. And he, you know, stalked her and you know, we don't know exactly when he seen her, but when he caught her by herself is when he beat her and raped her. They did catch him. He did go, you know, we did go to court, but the problem was with the court was, you know, he would look at her and smile and just never took it seriously. And he ended up just telling her, if you wasn't so beautiful, I wouldn't have been attracted to you. So you have nobody to blame but yourself. Oh, so she took her life. So we need a bill that his charges will be upgraded to, I know not murder, but manslaughter, and it can be done because in Minnesota, a guy was arrested for domestic beating his wife to the point where she took her life, and there's other cases where it's happened. But I can also say I lost my stepson. He was shot in the head, murder, and I lost 3 nephews to murder. The pain is the same because our kids are not coming back. But one thing I don't like is how the activists come in who have not had kids, lost kids or anything. They come in and they scream, tear this up, do this, that, the other. and it causes more harm. They separate the moms. If you could have seen how these moms were acting, and I'm friends with all of them. I can call any of them and we talk, and the way they make the moms feel. And it's kind of inhumane to make a mom feel like she's less than because her child wasn't killed by the police. I don't think that's right, because all of our pains are the same. And I think that starts within the community. One of the things I would like is for, I was trying to get the mothers to just stand together without all these, I know Tamika, I actually talked to her, but a lot of things that they do is just not right. We gotta do better. We really do. We gotta have the same energy for everybody, because unless you watched your child go on the ground or cremate them, you will never know that pain. You'll never know it. And it doesn't get easier. People say it gets easier over the years. I don't know where they got that from, because as the years go on, it gets harder and harder because you miss your child more. And you have two options. You either get out and you fight for justice, or you stay home and you lose your mind and you just crumble to nothing. And I chose to get out and fight for my daughter. Thank you all.
Ms. Gerald, we're with you. We're with you, and we're fighting too. Deputy Chief Larry Sneeling from the Chicago Police Department will now address us.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Deputy Chief Larry Snelling. I'm the Area 2 Deputy Chief. Commander Sean Joyce is the commander of one of the districts, the 22nd District. I also have districts 4, 5, and 6. As you know, there's a lot of crime that's occurring in those areas. All right? And we're doing everything that we can to fight those battles. The first thing I'd like to say is thank you, and thank you to the representatives who put this together, because you have no idea how important this is. Mm-hmm. This is one of the most important things that we can do right now, because we're fractured. As a city, we're fractured. Community and the police is fractured. So what I would like to do is get back to Sir Robert Peel, the inventor of policing, the community of the police and the police of the community. The only way we're going to get this thing done is efforts like this, where we all come together and we work this out. But before I go any further, I gotta look down at these mothers and I gotta tell you, these are two amazing women for what they've been through. And so prior to becoming the Area 2 Deputy Chief, I was the commander of the Englewood District. And all too often, I had to look in the faces of mothers like this, baby Gaston, who was shot in the chest, killed over the summer. 2-year-old young girl sitting on her mother's lap, shot in the chest. I actually went to the hospital. One of my favorite moments was watching her in the emergency room, and the nurse reached up to her and she looked at the nurse and said, "Don't touch my earrings." I knew she was gonna be all right at that moment. But not everybody's that lucky. Not every kid is that lucky. The problem that we're having in these communities right now is that we're not paying attention to the children, the young people who are out there who are victims of crime, or they get snatched up by the gang members. They get snatched up by the criminals. None of these kids in these neighborhoods are born criminals. I'm a product of Englewood. They're not born criminals. That behavior is taught, it's learned. So if we, as a responsible people here, community and police, don't get these kids when they're young, somebody else is going to grab them. And then our children will continuously be victims of violence, murder. I can tell you right now, none of us, and I can tell you the police department and the police officers who work under me are working diligently out there trying to stop this. It's really hard. It's a hard thing to do to see officers going through some of the things that they're going through out there. The attacks on police officers is on the rise. Crime and criminals have become emboldened. They do it in the open now. They'll do it right under the cameras, and then they'll dare you to touch them. This is the challenge that we face. But what I will say is this: if we can come together, if we can work together as community members to work with the police, work in lockstep with the police so that we understand each other, the police understand what it is you need, what it is you want, and you can understand what it is we need and what it is we want. For the most part, what we want to do is keep crime down. We are out here to protect you. That is our first order of business. And any police officer who doesn't believe in that doesn't believe in policing and shouldn't be a police officer. But I can tell you this right now. The police officers that I've seen go out there working, trying to get guns off the street, trying to keep down the violence, have done a great job doing so. I won't talk too much longer because I can go on forever with this. But I want to say thank you for being here. I'll be here to answer questions. Commander Joyce will be here to answer questions, and Director Glenn Brooks from CAPS, he'll be here to answer questions also, all right?
So wait a minute, Deputy Sneem, I got a question. Is it a gang problem? And how do we stop the gangs?
Well, I'll tell you this right now. Gang problems, it's more of a group problem now. The gangs don't have the same structure they used to have. It's fractured. It's factioned off. Problems that used to be neighborhood to neighborhood are now block to block. So I can live right across the street from a different gang faction, and we're at war with each other. Then there's the social media aspect of it, where these kids are on social media, disrespecting each other. Some of it is through rap music, and this has led to a lot of violence, a lot of crime, a lot of retaliation. We work with violence interrupters who are out there trying to keep down some of the violence. But the problem with that is, again, because it's so factioned off, it's getting harder and harder for even the people in the community to get to some of these kids because there's so many gang factions out there now. Just in Inglewood, I had 64 gang factions in just that one location. So that's becoming a bigger problem.
Let me ask you another question. I just did a TV show on crime. Representative Ford was on the show. One of the things that was said by a pastor from night pastor, and I've heard this at least 10 times from 10 different folks, is that there is a railroad car in Inglewood that brings guns to the neighborhood. And all you gotta do is go get the gun. True, not true, and if we know it, why don't you know it, and why hasn't something been done about it?
That's something that I would have to do a little more research.
But have you heard it?
I've heard it, but this isn't something, because I can tell you this right now. We've worked closely with federal partners. We've ATF, who we work with on a daily basis, especially in districts like Inglewood. When I was in Inglewood, the ATF was there all the time. And they're there to help us when they know that guns are coming in, or guns that as a matter of fact, there was a shipment of guns that came in from Kentucky, and we were able to intercept that. That was probably about a year and a half.
Where were they placed? Is this railroad thing real?
No. So that I would have to get a little more information on.
Okay.
On that, because we hear these things, but in order for me to give you some concrete information on that, I would need some fact-based information, and we'd have to talk to some people who would have that information.
So as a citizen, and I hear that, who do I call to say, hey, I just heard that there's some guns? And because here's what amazes me. I'm 10 years old and I know where to get a gun. I ain't gonna tell y'all how old I am, but I don't know where to go get no gun. If somebody gave me $1 million right now and said, go get a gun, I don't know where to go. How do these kids know where to go get a gun?
So here's one of the things that I'll tell you. Getting a gun now is easier than it used to be. That's number one. Now this, and I'll tell you this also. I was a TAC officer in the Englewood community in 1993 to 1999. I had heard the same thing about the freight cars bringing in guns into Englewood. We were never able to find freight cars that were bringing in guns into the community. Now, I'm not saying that didn't happen, but this is something that's been said for quite some time. Now, getting a gun now, I'll put it to you like this. When we used to get guns off the street, when I was a TAC officer back in the 90s, they had something called a Charter Arms. It was a little small, kind of crappy gun, not a big deal, but it would still kill someone. However, now the guns that they have, those guns are purchased from gun dealers. They're brought in, probably some of them are brought in from contiguous states. And it's easier to get those guns now. In Chicago, you couldn't have a handgun in the city of Chicago prior to them changing the laws because you couldn't register the gun here. And now those guns don't even have to be registered. So now, getting a handgun now is not a problem. These guns are being brought in by people who are funding some of the things that are going on in the neighborhoods. One of the things that I can tell you right now, some of the rappers that are out here now are funding these guns and funding the gangs. It's one of the things that keeps them relevant. So there are a lot of things that are happening out here that makes it easier for these kids to get guns. These kids now have Glocks, Springfield arms. They are better armed than the police. So the weapons that they have now are not just some throwaway gun that they found in someone's basement.
Wow, now you said the guns are not registered. Some guns are not registered. So is that a law that could change?
Well, registering a gun in Chicago, and again, having a handgun in Chicago, you could not have a handgun in the city of Chicago. I can't remember the year. I want to say it was 1985 when the registration law was passed, where you couldn't have a handgun. You couldn't register a handgun in Chicago. Now, those laws don't exist anymore. There's also conceal and carry. So if someone is carrying a weapon legally, they're allowed to carry that weapon legally.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Lashawn just told me to get back on the program.
Okay, all right.
So, Michelle Mckee?
Becchiani.
Becchiani, please.
Is it still morning time? Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Becchiani, and I am the Senior Legal and Policy Advisor at the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, so I'm really happy to be here. Initially, before I got to this office, I did a lot of work with young people, and I just want to say I'm really happy that is the focus of today. Before coming to the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, I had the opportunity to work in a lot of different schools. Specifically, when I was in law school, I did some volunteering work at Hyde Park Academy. And, I'm born and raised in Oak Park. Representative Ford is also in my area. I see him running every now and then on Fillmore. But my childhood, there are things I just never thought of as being an issue. Going to the park, it just seemed that was the norm. And so to be at Hyde Park Academy, where the young people showed us that every year in their yearbook, they have a rest in peace section in the back. And it was said very nonchalantly, as if that were normal. And that's what alarmed me. And it's crazy to think that young people at that age, so young, feel a sense of hopelessness that early. And so one of the things I'm really passionate about in this space is identifying those pain points early. Solutions that address issues like education, more importantly, trauma. I was also doing some volunteer work at Manly High School, And the young people are just telling me that there was just a shooting right on Polk Street, a woman coming off the bus. And a 15-year-old girl saying, I'm just trying to survive. High school students. And so when I got into this space and then was put in the courtroom briefly, I experienced so much trauma just hearing the stories, working with victims, and it made me realize, just imagine if I were the family member, the mother. And it made me even more passionate to come to this solution of how can we address this from the root cause? Because right now, our criminal justice system is a repository of so many failed opportunities where we could really address the pain points that lead to individuals being victimized by gun violence and gun violence in our communities. And so one of the three things that I've noticed the most, access to guns, but also the reason for carrying a gun. So it's ironic that I'm now in this office. I used to volunteer in the jail, so I can't do that anymore. But I remember a lot of young people in maximum security, Division 10, 19, 20, and an individual said, I'd rather be caught with a gun than without one. That is something we really need to unpack. That someone feels the need to carry a gun just to be. That they are willing to take on the consequences of being incarcerated because they see that as a more viable option. And those are the opportunities that we really need to intervene, because as was said earlier, they're crying for help. They're really crying for help. And if we are going to be invested in our safe communities, we have to be able to listen to those cries well before they even enter the system, well before they engage with law enforcement. And a big one for me is education. You know, in one courtroom, we had an individual that was successful in probation. And during his probation, he had an educational advocate. The judge said, congratulations, you finished probation. And he said, I want to stay on probation because I've gotten so much support in my schoolwork. That someone would want to continue to be engaged in the criminal justice system because they're finally getting the resources that they've been crying for. That's a pain point, where people feel a sense of having hope, if there's something to invest in their lives, but before they can feel that they can invest in their lives, we need to show that we're investing in them. So to create environments where kids enjoy being at school, where they get the trauma service that they need, we should be having social workers in every school full-time and not part-time, especially in those schools where they've lost their friend the week before. And so in this space that I've been in, when it comes to violence, I wish I had all the solutions. I really do. But I'm realizing that solution needs to stem by those who have been impacted by violence. Not just because of their insight, not just because of their personal experience, but they have the most skin in the game. Because it's more than just decreasing crime stats, it's having a sense of security in that I can send my child to the park without any hesitation. And I'll close on this part. Born and raised in Oak Park, and I've looked at crime from the court cases, the data, and so forth. And it's been more so abstract. You deal with the victims' families, but you're not the victim herself. And my mom prepared me. She's a former trauma surgeon at Cook County Hospital, so she's seen a lot. And she said, Michelle, you will never understand that pain of losing a loved one, where their life is robbed. And I could never connect to that. But a week or so ago, there was a shooting in Oak Park on Lexington, right near Lexington and Mayfield, near the Maple Park, near Maple. And it shook me. Because Lexington, there's no stop sign between Harlem and I think Clinton. So home and that area, that I go down home all the time. That is my route. That is where I have taken my son for stroller rides when he was a baby. And it shook me because my son plays soccer right at Maple Park. And even in this space of dealing with these cases, that was the most eye-opening experience for me, because the idea of that, an area where my son, where kids just go to the park, they could be victims of gun violence. That is an important point because that's a reality for so many people in this city. And that should really push us to really work together, collaborate, because it goes beyond who's at fault. It goes beyond what the numbers are and pointing fingers is. These are people's lives. And so if that is the way we look at things, really people's lives, It's an opportunity for us to be innovative, an opportunity for us to find new ways of investing, an opportunity is for us to get really in the nitty-gritty with a holistic approach, not just in the system, but schools, grocery stores, access to mental health care. There's so many different pain points that I feel that we've all been missing that could really contribute to making sure they don't enter into our doors. And so I'm really happy to see this space. Thank you so much. I'm glad you went before me because I'm gonna cry on the stage, and Stage Attorney Fox is like, why are you crying on this stage? But thank you so much because, no matter how old they get, I have a 6-year-old, you're like, that's my baby. That's my baby. And to be in a space where someone snatches your baby and be in a space where you feel like someone could snatch your baby as a mother, let me stop. But thank you for being in the space. And this is yours. It's a nicer mask, but I'm gonna take it with me. I'm not trying to steal from CPD. Okay. But thank you for letting me be in this space, and I'm really excited for the work that we can do. But again, I really want to make sure that the individuals that are contributing to the solutions, and not just in their voice and their stories, but solutions where they know it'll impact their communities and their loved ones, they should be at the center stage of the change that we want to see in the city and the county and the state. So thank you.
Thank you. So now we want to hear from the Cook County Sheriff's Department, Becky Levin. Is it Levin or Levine? Levin. Becky Levin.
Hi, thank you. I'm Becky Levin. I'm the Executive Director of Public Policy at the Cook County Sheriff's Office. But my background is actually in public health, like many other people, apparently. I went to UIC for my master's in public health. I don't know if it was a requirement to be on the panel today that you had to have some UIC connection, but very proud of that connection. So I'm also a big rule follower, so I know the charge to us was to share some solutions. So I'm going to share 3 buckets of solutions, especially when I'm sitting here with 4 legislators in the audience. I'm not going to pass up that opportunity. So the first thing is that my public health training tells us that one of the things we can do to prevent violence and reduce crime is to invest in community-based programs. Those that come up from the community, like Michelle was talking about. We're at the start of a really great opportunity in Illinois. Through the legalization of cannabis, a lot of the tax revenue is being invested in the R3 initiative that puts money back into communities that are most affected by violence to do violence prevention. And the state just created a new Office of Gun Violence Prevention. So those are great things, but there are some things that we need to do to make sure they can make the most difference possible. The first is that we have to sustain it. Illinois has a terrible track record of trying something for like a year, and then we say, we didn't solve crime, let's move on to the next thing. So let's give it a little time. Let's make sure we're evaluating it. Look at what works, build on doing more of what works. If something doesn't work, don't just throw it out. We can tweak it and see and build on what works. I think this speaks to Representative LaPointe's desire for evidence-based practices. And the third is that we really need to make sure that it's easy for community-based organizations to get those funding. I don't know about you, but I want the people doing the good work on the ground in communities to spend their time doing the good work on the ground in communities, not pushing papers around so that they can apply for state funding. I will also mention another area where we know there's a great community-based solution is in street outreach and intervention. And during the pandemic in particular, those folks who do violence outreach and interruption have done a lot of other great health work, right? They've distributed food, they've encouraged people to get vaccinated, they've promoted COVID testing. We really need to treat these workers who do street outreach and intervention like community health workers, because that's what they're doing, and that will open up a lot of funding opportunities for those programs. The second area is that we need to interrupt the cycle of violence and trauma. None of us in this room created the system that we have, but the fact is that we have communities that have experienced generations of disinvestment and violence, basically a cycle of collective trauma. And unfortunately, we all know now what collective trauma looks like, right? No matter where we live, no matter what our experiences are, the past 2 years have been collective trauma. So we can relate to that and what's necessary to heal from that. So we need to invest in mental health services that break the cycle of violence and trauma. We need to invest in housing that gives people a roof over their head while they get back on their feet. And ultimately, we need to address the fact, and I'm going to steal a line from Representative Ford and Representative Hurley, we need to address the fact that there's one system, a health system, that provides for people who look like me and Representative Hurley when we're experiencing mental illness or substance use. And there's another system, a carceral system, that takes care of people who are experiencing behavioral health issues, mental illness, substance use, if they look like Representative Ford, and that's just wrong. The third area is getting guns off the street, getting illegal guns off the street. So I mentioned my background is in public health. I've worked on violence prevention as a public health issue for about 20 years. And a lot of that has been as part of a larger constellation of injury prevention issues. So I've done a lot of work on motor vehicle safety, for example. So compare cars to guns, right? They're both, completely human-made products. They both have legitimate purposes. They both do a lot of damage to health and safety. They do a lot of harm. When it comes to motor vehicles, we have entire systems in place to try to mitigate that harm, right? We have regulations, we have speed limits. The government does research into how to make motor vehicles safer. And the state just adopted new policies about promoting electric vehicles so that we're minimizing the environmental damage done by cars. So we all may grumble, like if we get a traffic ticket, right? But we know ultimately those traffic laws are there to keep us safe. Why can't we take that same approach to guns, right? Recognize there's a legitimate purpose, but we also need really strong regulations. So in Illinois, we're pretty lucky. The Giffords Law Center gives our gun laws an A-. A couple years ago it was a B+, so we're on the right path. I think that we can get to an A, right? Right now we have about the 8th strongest gun laws in the nation. So that seems like something we can get to number 1 on. So a couple things that we can do to get there. One is that anyone can go into a gun shop and buy ammunition without having any sort of background check. So if you have a firearm owner's identification card, a FOID card, you can just show that to buy ammunition, but the gun dealer doesn't have to do anything to actually check that your FOID card is valid, right? So say someone could have committed an act of domestic violence and had their FOID card revoked. But if law enforcement hasn't actually physically taken that card from them, they can go into a gun dealer and buy ammunition. So that's a problem. That's something that Representative Ford started working with our office to address last summer. And another thing that we can do is we can ban ghost guns. So ghost guns are really an emerging problem locally, but on the coasts, they've become an enormous part of the gun problem. So what's a ghost gun? A ghost gun is any gun that doesn't have a serial number, which means that it's completely untraceable by law enforcement. And the primary way that we get these ghost guns is you can go online and you can buy a kit to build a ghost gun. So because it comes in a few different parts, it's not technically considered a firearm by the federal government. You can go online, you don't need any sort of background check, any proof of who you are, nothing. You buy a kit and you put it together, and it's about as easy to assemble as IKEA furniture. So that's absolutely unacceptable. We have a bill that's going to be introduced in the Senate on Wednesday to ban ghost guns in Illinois. It's Senate Bill 2957. Those are my calls, or the Sheriff's Office calls to action on a policy perspective so we can make our communities safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic. And now we're going to hear from Karen Friedman Wilson. She is the president of the Chicago Urban League and the former mayor of Gary, Indiana. She left Gary to come here and join the Urban League, and we thank you. I'm gonna tell you all a joke while we're waiting for Karen. Chris Rock told a joke to say, Let them keep the guns, but let's charge $5,000 for the bullet. Y'all supposed to laugh at that. Karen?
Good morning. First and foremost, I want to thank the members of the Illinois General Assembly for convening this. This is, as many have said, very timely and arguably long overdue. What struck me in listening to those who have gone before me is that folks really have thought long and hard about this. And as someone who has seen this from the perspective of a judge, a prosecutor, a longtime public defender, and a victim of crime, having had a gun pointed in my face, and as someone who has advocated for both prevention, interdiction, and the importance of gun violence prevention, I have thought about this a long time. And what I know is what has been said is that there is no magic potion. There's no easy answers. And so I would say all of the above that we have heard about are true. And when I think about the original question is what legislation, save for what these moms have admirably suggested, I don't know that we need any more legislation. We certainly want to see enhanced penalties for babies who have lost their lives. We want to see enhanced penalties when someone has driven someone to suicide. But beyond that, we have all of the legislative tools that we need. But here's what I would say to the members of the General Assembly who have so thoughtfully convened us. While hearings are important, we need a working meeting. Because that's really when Hermine started off talking about Eric Adams. That's really what he's looking to do, to roll up his sleeves and to say, let's garner all of the resources that are being pointed at enforcement of crime, prevention of crime, providing community-based supports from organizations like the Urban League and others who are engaged in the prevention work. Let's bring all of that together. And let's bring that to scale. Now, scale in Chicago is easier said than done. Heck, scale in Gary is easier said than done. I tried that for 8 years. And if you see the news, you know that didn't quite work. But here's what we have in our favor that we have not had before. Unprecedented money. We've got art money. We have corporate money. We have philanthropy money. And we have the attention of folks who haven't had a child's life snuffed out, who haven't lost a child to this, who have not listened like many of us have all night at gunshots and have sort of made that the part of our sleep. You know, some people go to sleep with the water and all of this other nice, but you know, we just make gunshots a part of our sleep pattern, right? You don't jump up anymore. Because it has not been confined to one neighborhood or set of neighborhoods anymore. We have the attention of everyone. So I would say that the retailers would be willing to serve on that working group. I would say that folks who have not even been the victims of crime, like many of us have, would be inclined to serve on that working group. So I would say to you all that the key, one of the keys is process. The process of getting folks together and saying, let's get in a room and come up with concrete solutions in every aspect of this until we get it done. And I think we can do it now, not just come up with the solutions, because you're right. They've presented that through the University of Chicago's crime lab. The data is there. But to really put the resources behind what we know works, behind the evidence-based solutions, behind all of the other things that we have seen work. And let's work towards solving this problem. I will tell you that the Urban League is ready to play our role.
So the next person I wanted to bring up, because Fran and I, we've been working with this guy and Rep. Flowers, Leader Flowers and LaPointe. We talk about human capital, but we also have to talk about the fact that our businesses across the city and the state are being destroyed. And if we destroy our businesses and run them out, it's going to increase violence in our city because jobs go away with them. And so we have to work together, and I really appreciate your message about making sure that we have a working group. And so with that, Hermaine, I'd like to bring up Rob Carr, that's catching a lot of, whatever you want to call it, from the members of the Illinois Retail Merchants. Thanks, Rob.
Well, thank you. Thanks to Representative Ford, Representative Hurley for their leadership here, and their chairman, and Representative Flowers. We won't get into how long we've known each other. And Representative LaPointe. I'm Rob Carr. I'm President and CEO of the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, and I appreciate the invitation to be here today. We represent retailers of all types and sizes, from Mag Mile to Cairo, Illinois, pharmacies, grocery stores, hardware, restaurant, movie theaters, you name it, we have it. Cannabis dispensaries, we have it. The thing I think we need to think about here is I want to talk to you about retail crime. And I think the first thing we think of is retail theft. And we think about somebody walking out with a candy bar. Those are the good old days. That might have been when Representative Flowers and I were first getting started, but that's not what we're talking about today. And that's not what's plaguing us today. What's plaguing us today is organized retail crime. And it's organized. They work with shopping lists. They have segments and cells. Some are shoppers, some are transporters, some are sellers, fencers, some are buyers, some move it overseas. It's global, it's national, it's state, and it's local. It's all of it. I was at DC last week on this very topic, trying to address the global and national part. We'll be working here to try to address the state and the local part, but that's the first solution. We need to see this for what it is, which is connected. What is being stolen, it has been documented, is funding guns on our streets. It's funding human trafficking. It's funding drugs. It's funding about any other thing you want to get into, and it's an easy source of funding because anything that walks out the store, $1 is profit, cent one is profit, right? So we need to see it for what it is. It's interconnected in what it funds. Secondly, we need to understand it's happening everywhere. Mag Mile and Louis Vuitton may get the headlines, but it's happening in stores all over the state, and it's happening in big and small. It's not just the rich store problems or the core problems at Mag Mile. Third thing we need to see is it impacts everyone. It's easy to sit back and say, okay, Louis Vuitton lost 100 purses. Okay, it impacts Louis Vuitton. It impacts their employees. Because Louis Vuitton, I don't care if you're Louis Vuitton or you're, some mom and pop apparel store, or what you are, you have to sell more to make up for that just to keep your doors open. And I have never seen this in 27 years of working for IRMA. Stores now, number one or number two is a safety question. It used to be just taxes and regulation. It's now one or two is safety, is determining their and where they're going to locate, whether they're going to locate, and their viability. That's how bad this problem has become. It impacts the customers who are in the store. It impacts services that we all rely upon. So it impacts all of us. Sales tax revenue is the number one funder of local government and number two of the state. As goes retail sales, so goes the services we all rely upon. So we are all impacted by this retail theft, whether organized retail theft, whether we think we are or not. Hermine, I think you mentioned at the very beginning your fear of going shopping, right? That fear impacts our viability. It impacts, if you talk to the city of Chicago, it impacts everyone's effort to try to get 2.6 million people to come back downtown every day for work like we used to during the pandemic, or 55 plus million tourists to come back to the city of Chicago every year like they used to during the pandemic. And while we may not be alone in Chicago, San Francisco's an issue, New York's an issue, the fact of the matter is we're at the top, we're in that top list, we're mentioned nationwide. And so it impacts all of us. We have to, somebody mentioned we're fractured. And what frustrates me is the finger pointing. I will tell you, retailers don't care about the finger pointing, right? We need to coordinate, we need to cooperate, and we need to see it as it is, which is it's interconnected. And I think this is why it's such a good start for all of us to start here. And think about it. There's estimates all over the place, the size of this problem nationally, but I'm going to use a very common figure of 60 billion. Illinois is 3.8% population. That's roughly 2.2 billion of that 60 billion. You're talking about roughly a little over 200 million. If you cut that by 10%, I'd have to I'm not that good at math to figure out the 6.25% tax rate, but we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of money that we can find just by stopping that problem, and let alone choking off the revenue to all the other illicit activity they do. So that is my goal today, and has been my goal for the last several weeks, is try to make us all understand the interconnectedness of this, and that it's not a standalone problem, and it's all related. And I look forward to working with all of you on addressing this problem as we go forward. When I say this problem, not just ORC, but the broader problem as well. Thank you.
So we'll now hear from Teresa Cordoba from UIC, Great Cities Institute. Did I say it right?
You sure did.
Oh, all right. I get the prize.
Good morning, everyone. Representatives. So I am from the Great Cities Institute, as I was introduced. That is an institute here at UIC. And a few years back, which is when I met both Representatives Flowers and Representative LaFord, we produced a number of reports on the issues of youth joblessness. One of those was entitled "Abandoned in Their Neighborhoods: Youth Joblessness Amidst the Flight of Jobs and Opportunity." In that report, we talked about the context of the loss of jobs and the subsequent impact on neighborhoods, the amount of disinvestment, for example, that meant for the neighborhoods. In that abandonment, it also included the loss of various kinds of anchor institutions, including schools, the loss of access to retail, the loss of other resources, the loss even of social capital, the increase of drugs into those communities, and also the subsequent problems that went along with that. In another report, or maybe even it was that one, we've done this series, and you can find these on our website, we also showed the parallel between those communities that had high rates of joblessness were also communities where there were high rates of violence. So now let me tell you just what some of those figures are. When we first did this report, it was a little higher than what our most recent figures are, but not by much. Citywide, for African American young men between the ages of 20 and 24, citywide, 44% of them are jobless and out of school and out of work. All right, so the number for just jobless is even higher. This is, excuse me, out of school and out of work, 44% citywide. Now, if you go to particular neighborhoods, those numbers are even higher. Those numbers are in the 60%, almost 70% range. It's true in Cook County as well. The figures in Cook County are just a little bit less than that. In the state of Illinois, a little bit even less than that. But in the city of, but still very high, still at around 40%. Now in the city of Chicago, for example, for whites, for white men, 2024, the number is only 7.9%. Right? Compare that to 44%. Right? So you see that the impact there, and it's tied then to the violence. Now, one of the things that we said in those reports is that it's chronic, right? That this is a problem that is continuing. It's been a problem since really the decline of the manufacturing industry. We know, for example, that from 77 to 80, just in that 3-year period, an old Chicago Jobs Council report said just in that 3-year period, we lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs. Now, manufacturing jobs have a multiplier effect, right? So imagine all the other jobs that were lost in addition to that. There was no effort made to accommodate people into a changing economy. That's part of the problem. And so people were just left to be on their own. They were abandoned in their neighborhoods. So what is the solution? We have been in a sort of restructuring economy. We have been in a changing economy. What we need to start thinking about doing is investing in workforce programs, not the old kind of workforce programs, but the kind of workforce programs we can identify best practices, the kind of workforce programs that are going to provide our young people access to the new emerging kinds of technologies, right? Whether it's advanced manufacturing, we've done some other reports showing that there are opportunities in manufacturing and advanced manufacturing, that with proper training, our folks can fulfill those jobs. Green technology, there's going to be a lot of jobs coming up with that. We need to think ahead. And any of the other high-tech firms or high-tech opportunities. So we need to think about workforce programs, and I think that's one place where we could use some legislative focus. And again, the first step is going to be identifying what are the best practices in some of those. So I think around the issue of joblessness, and again, you notice I use the word joblessness, not unemployment, because unemployment only captures those people who are actively looking for work. Joblessness is a ratio, population ratio, and that captures people who are disaffected, disillusioned, and disengaged from the workforce. So that's one area. Now you know yourselves, as if you're working, that there's a lot of pride and a lot of a sense of productivity and a sense of power that can come from working. Well, the opposite of that is also true when you're not working, right? That sort of sense of you turn on yourself, it's my fault, right? It's you don't have the same kind of sense of pride or accomplishment. So it's a different even kind of poverty than just not having enough, right, money. So that as we talk about jobs, we also want to give the kinds of jobs that are going to instill opportunities for advancement, instill that sense of pride, and so on. So that's one area, is the area around jobs. And since my time is limited, that's all I will say about that. But mind you, when the jobs left, as I pointed out, right, the social capital, the anchor institutions, education, retail, all those kinds of things also left. And so now we have these disinvested neighborhoods. Now, I think it was Representative LaPointe who talked about there needs to be investment, community investment. I think you did well. You did as well, Representative, talk about the importance of community investment. Well, typically, community investment is top down, right? Typically, it's sort of it's brought in, and not that we don't need some involvement that way, but one of the things that I think would really be empowering to do the kind of community investment where we're getting young people. I think this point about getting them when they're really young is really important. Young people involved in community development processes, right? Where you're instilling in them not only a sense of efficacy but a sense of ownership and stewardship, to involve them in a process to help them define what should be the future of their communities, what their neighborhood should look like. So I think some funding around community-based initiatives that involve really, really young people and start out with, what is your vision? What would you like your neighborhood to look like in 5 years? What would you like your neighborhood to look like in 10 years? And engage them in a visioning process, and then engage them in a set of strategies on how they would actually make those things real. And what you're doing is replacing some of the excitement that they get maybe from some of their at-risk behaviors with the excitement of building their neighborhoods. The excitement, right, and the sense of efficacy and power that comes from seeing an idea they have turn into fruition. Whether it's giving them money to turn into a participatory budgeting process, where it's giving them money to engage in a community-based planning process, but to actually come up with ideas for stewardship for their neighborhood. So that's the second sort of category of ideas. And then thirdly, and I guess I'll wrap it here in a minute, I think when I was talking earlier with some of our officers and with Commander Snelling, for example, we also did some report on gangs, by the way, and I'm glad that our reports were in line with what Commander Snelling knows, right, which is this idea that they're very fractured. They're not the hierarchical gangs that they used to be, and you can't deal with them the same way that we used to be. But a lot of these conflicts are based on interpersonal conflicts, right? And so part of what I think also becomes important for us to do then is to, first of all, to address these interpersonal conflicts, address some of the hypermasculinity that comes from taking out, for example, their own feelings around loss of efficacy on women, taking it out on one another, taking it out on their community at large. How do we reintroduce different concepts of what it means to be a man? I think that's also important. But I think something else somebody said earlier about education, not just education, but early childhood education. Because I'm in complete agreement with what's been said by the officers and by you, Becky, too, about the importance of getting them when they're young. Because by the time they're 9 and 10, you all know this better than I do, by the time they're 9 and 10, somebody else is already recruiting them. And they need to have this sense of alternative about what else is possible for them. So I think the early childhood education, we can't invest enough in early childhood education. So I'll stop with that, and I really appreciate what everybody has said, and I guess I want to conclude by giving my much love to Angela and to Elizabeth. Thank you for being here and sharing with us, but much, much, much deep love to both of you.
Thank you. So, Representative Ford, one of the things I think you have introduced that I think you ought to talk about at this point is legislation to teach the trades in the schools, in the high schools. Is that legislation on board? Okay, you talk about it later? Grade schools? Okay, and that's carpentry and electrician and plumbing and stuff like that. Dr. Elfrida Holloway Beth from the University of Illinois, Chicago campus.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. Representative Ford and I work on the Illinois Violence Task Force at IDPH. I was asked to talk to you guys about a project that I work on here as an assistant research professor at University of Illinois here. I'm also the director of epidemiology at the Cook County Department of Public Health. I've been very touched by what you all have said today. I grew up on the South Side. I have a humongous family. I have 15 sisters and 6 brothers, the first one to go to college. I have
You said 15?
I have 55 nephews, 26 nieces. I have a humongous family. Wow.
Christmas dinner is wonderful, isn't it?
I only managed to have 2 kids myself, so. keeping it together. I've been touched in like so many different ways. I work with the ME Pawnee here, who I had to call and email because I had a cousin who was shot and killed in his home at 6 a.m. in the morning. John Owens. He was a community organizer, a really good friend of President Obama, was in his wedding. I've been touched by the rap scene. I had a little cousin killed in some feuds with like Chief Keef and them. Recently, I had a cousin-in-law, young Dolph, who was killed in Memphis. So being a Black person in America and trying to really deal with some of this crime and issues, like it really is pervasive, and it's very meaningful to have all you guys working on it in the various avenues that you do. I was asked to talk about a project that I have here at UIC, which looks at law enforcement epidemiology, where we use data to evaluate injuries and deaths caused by police officers, and also along with occupational risk of officers, to try to get a better understanding of the whole gamut of injuries that we can get with the data that we have. Data is lacking. So even, for example, data we use from hospital information is only about 37% of data that actually really exist. So we really don't understand what's going on in a real comprehensive way. And so in the project, I'm working with the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, and the state of Minnesota, and other people have come on board to surveil data around both law enforcement and civilian injuries and deaths. So we look at information. What we see is that what we see out there is like the extremities, right? So we see gun violence, as you say, or we see people who get killed by police, and those are the headlines, those are the touching things. But what's invasive in our communities is that violence is pervasive, and it's not just an individual led situation or just interpersonal interactions. Things are systemic and institutional. A lot of the root causes have been because of legislation and policies and politics. I recommend anyone who hasn't had a chance to or even know about the 1619 Project book that's recently just come out, to read that. That's what we don't have in our educational system, is a lot of times understanding of said root causes and the history behind it. So I really recommend this book. It really is helpful in understanding your history. I remember being a young child thinking that only bad things happen to Black people. And then when I grew up, I realized that was epidemiologists saying that. So, you can see the rates, the high rates of heart disease and this. I said, dang, nothing else happened to nobody else. And really, it does mess with your mind to only hear negative things, think nothing of yourself in your community. And so we may have to look into those things. But in my role as an epidemiologist, I like to say that we are working with health equity to understand health outcomes, but also getting a better understanding of working within institutions and understanding policies and legislations and how that has related to all of our health outcomes are things that we need to trace and track throughout time. So I really appreciate this opportunity, and I thank you all for your work, because we are all here together. We see all of these various problems, and if we all just try to work on them together, stabilize families, I think that might be one of the biggest things that we should work on, and that's just a personal thing from me. But I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Yvonne Livingston from UIC. You all, we are going to go over because we started late, and so Representative Ford, can we go to 12:30?
You know, UIC, where you at? Yes, they said.
Okay. So we're now going to hear from Ms. Livingston.
Thank you, everyone, and I will be remiss in saying that I am absolutely thrilled to be here and to have this opportunity to speak. I want to thank first Dr. Hayes for asking me last minute to be here, and she's mentored me from the Chance program, born and raised here from UIC. And so I stand here as a UIC student, and I can call myself a Black psychologist because I only got one Spanish class left. So the program is done. But then I can also say I'm a mother. I have 6 children, 4 sons and 2 daughters. And they went to college before I did. And what they showed me was that they can change who and what they are simply by having someone encourage them and stand behind them. And that's what I did. I did it troubled though. And I speak in circles because my great-grandmother was born in 1916. So subsequently from that point up until 2020 when my granddaughter was born, I can speak for the women in my family and say that our children are in danger and we need to stand up for them.
Yes. Yes.
I cannot begin to tell you that when my 20-year-old son stood and said, "Mama, I'm angry," and I said, "Why?" And he said, "I don't know." From a psychologist standpoint, we understand that a child's brain does not fully develop until the age of 25. So when we say children, I mean 25-year-old children. That's exactly what this is. So I cannot approach a problem of violence without talking about it generationally. Because violence to me is not just an action, it's words. And violence has been spoken on Black people, since forever. Okay. And so when we talk about violence, we do have to understand the definition. For me, violence is words and actions. And so in order for me, you ask me for my thoughts, and then you ask me for solutions. So here's my solution. Provide everybody with some therapy.
Yes.
I did have to talk to my therapist before I came here this morning, and I did talk to her about the word violence and what it meant to me. Because violence to me doesn't make me want to be here. Because it's spoken to me. It's not just an action. I lived in it. I was born and raised in Washington Park in the projects. And then I moved to Inglewood. And now I'm on the west side. Still violent areas. But I lived there because I choose to. Because, I didn't have any other choice. So now it's a choose now. So now I choose to speak and say that violence is all around me. All of your conversations that you've had here today, I compartmentalized, I got that word right, everything you said, okay? Because it all matters to a Black psychologist. Because the UIC did provide me with a great education, and they did really hone everything in me. But the Black Studies Department, Professor Jahari Jabir said to me, "Yvonne, take your experiences with you while you're on this journey." And that's exactly what I did. I testified in all these classrooms, political science, nonprofits, everything that was surrounding Black life. And I came out a Black psychologist because I said to all those children, "I hear you, please don't call me mama, because you're gonna make me spring into action. You're gonna make me do something." And the part that I want to do is to simply tell all of you, listen to children. They know what's best for them. I'm gonna tell you, because when my 20-year-old son said, "Ma, I'm angry," I sprang into action. "Son, what do you need?" And he said to me, he said, "Ma, I don't know."
And I said, okay, son, let's figure it out. I'm gonna work with you. Let's work together. Y'all, they got me tired. I still ain't finished a lot of papers because people have been dying all around me. Not personally, but I still feel it. And it does stop me from doing the things that I need to do because I sprung into action. I'm getting ready to work with the Urban Youth Trauma Center. They got some of y'all money. Dr. Suarez, Lisa Suarez, Dr. Jahil Abdul Adil. They're gonna use me to speak to my community, to have these tough conversations, because I will. I speak for children until they can speak for themselves. I'm Ella Baker in this moment, I'm Ida B. Wells, to simply say that you all have to give voice to children. You cannot make decisions without them. It's absolutely imperative that we listen to them, because if we don't, they're gonna continue to fall by the wayside. And I don't wanna hear anybody say, that's not my problem. Because Emmett Till's mother said the same thing until it happened to her son. So now I don't want my son to be a statistic or my daughter. I don't want anybody else's to either. Let's give them the resources they need. Mental health for everybody.
All right. Thank you.
So we have one more speaker before we get into dialogue and questions, and that's Diane Mckee, Juvenile Temporary Detention Center.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to speak today. I just ditto what everybody has said. I'm glad I'm last. I don't have to say too much because I think everyone has had some very, very good solutions, and but I see those young people every day. Those young people that are out here committing various crimes. My phone has probably been off about 10 times since I'm sitting here, just dealing with the young people that's coming into our facility. And I tell you, we do have a problem. But I've been in this field for over 44 years, and I can't tell you how many times I've sat in forums like this and other and talk about the same thing. Talk about the same thing. And here, 44 years in this business, and we still talking. We need to take some action because our young people are showing us we failing. We talking, but we're not doing. And they keep showing us that, that we're not meeting their needs. We need to reinvest in people and families. We got to. Because we are, when I get a kid that's 10 years old in a facility, this is a maximum security facility. The trauma that young person goes through is unbearable. It's real trauma. If you can imagine in your own home, going in your bedroom and being locked in, and you can't get out, just the thought of that is just mind-boggling. So we need to do something. We need to listen to our children. In 2017, we had a forum at the detention center. We brought various people in because we had some young people there that wanted to express what their needs were. So I implore you, legislators, and I invite you. You want to know what we need to do? Listen to our young people. They will tell you. But we as people, professionals, we have got to reinvest in our families and our kids. I believe, it is my belief, that we need to go to our schools. We know who these kids are, very young. They see them right in school, in elementary school. But we let them go on and on and on. We let them pass by not being able to read. Reading is a big issue with our young people. When I see 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds and they can only read on a first or second grade level, that constitutes violence right there. Because people want to be, when I say reinvest, Everybody want to feel worthy and valued. And our kids, they don't have no hope. They do what they do because they don't have no hope. So I say that we need to begin with right in the schools, our mothers. If we go over to 26th Street, just Cook County, there is over 5,000 men in jail. When they say, well, and you got mothers at home trying to raise, children. Well, when you got that many men in jail, where are the fathers? Where are your fathers? So mothers have no help. And it takes a village. We hear that all the time, to raise children. It do. But when half the village is locked up, you got a problem. So I think that we need to realistically, I totally agree with community-based programs. I totally agree with that. I agree that they need day treatment centers. I agree with that. I also believe that we need to put some legislation together regarding our social media, big problem. When I'm not from Chicago, but I've had the luxury of being in the Michigan system, in the Georgia system, and I worked around this country, just making sure that children's rights are not being violated in institutions. And I tell you that when I talk to these kids, they are angry. I've never seen such angry youth that's just given up on life. They've given up on life. So I say we gotta start reinvesting, giving them hope. We gotta have mentorship. We got to have, a lot of these kids are angry because their mothers and their dads are angry. And they're angry because we really not helping them.
That's facts.
So what we have to do, even with our mothers, we need to start training them. There used to be a program years ago where single moms, when their kid got to be 2 or could go in nursery school, put the kid in nursery school, put the mom in training so that they can get a career.
That's right.
And the kid is getting help too. So if we want to be real, we need to be real about it.
That's right. That's right.
And we need to invest. Because it's showing us we're not investing. So I say, let us help one another. Let us reinvest in our families. I invite you all to come to the detention center. Sit down. We got them there. We got them there from carjackers to you name it. We got them. We got a boatload this weekend. And they will talk with you. They will talk with you. They will tell you why they're angry. Okay, we need all the programs. And the problem that I have in detention, we have a lot of good programs, but our problem is the gangs. Because they're closed in. So we got a lot of things that we deal with. But I also say to you that we work with them and you see they begin to melt off the fear. They begin to melt all that off. They begin to talk to one another. So it is possible if we get serious and really, and kids, the one thing about young people, they know if you're sincere or not. See, they know that. And if they know that you're sincere, they'll listen to you. So I say to you all, yes, we got a lot of work to do, but we also know what we need to do. And until we reinvest in the families, then we just wasting time.
Amen.
And basically, that's my spiel.
Thank you.
To the young mothers, I got you. I love you all. Thank you so much. God bless you. And just continue to be strong and fight the fight.
Thank you. We are now going to go to our Q&A. The microphone is there. Lashawn, I want to add one thing that you all have not talked about that I think is important, and that is the media. The media. Chicago is approaching a new media. The Tribune has become a corporate newspaper. You're going to see less and less Chicago news and more national news. You're already seeing it, LA Times, New York Times, Washington Post, and so forth. That means our news lessens. That means we will hear about Neiman Marcus and what happens on North Michigan, but you won't hear about the little boutique store in Lincoln Park. The Sun-Times is about to merge through philanthropic money with WBEZ. It will be the largest public entity in the country. What's that mean? That mean Lashawn Ford, you're gonna get covered? Mary, does that mean you're gonna get covered? Okay, we have a black press, we have a community press, support it, pay attention to it, because that's about where you're getting ready to get your real news. Social media has changed the game. It's a new world out here. Trump ain't wrong in talking about fake news. He is not 100% wrong. I don't like the fakeness that he put out there, but he told the truth. Pay attention to this news media because that is where your images come from. That is where your perception comes from. That is where your family values come from. That is where everything comes from to shape your opinion and your vote. Say amen. Amen. All right. So now let's get some questions. I know you all got some, so please come to the podium and
come to the podium. If not, we'll just
microphone.
make closing remarks. If no one has questions for the panelists or legislators, we'll close out with.
There you go.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I'm Greg Sherman, Director of Communications and Outreach and Engagement for ex-cons for Community and Social Change.
Wait. You're an ex-con?
Oh, absolutely, sir.
What's an ex-con?
Someone who been there, done that. Served time, got out.
You're an ex-offender, right?
Ex-offender, returned to citizen, whatever new name they give it.
No,
it's all the same.
You know, Tyrone Muhammad, he always say, no, I'm an ex-con.
Absolutely.
So he lives up to, he says, my name, I'm an ex-con. And he don't want no other name but that. So.
Absolutely. I mean, he says that X represents the unknown also and untapped potential. So I stand before you proudly as an ex-con. As we talk about solutions, I have a specific question. In light of the most recent thing that happened downtown, I saw you down there, sir, Mr. Glenn Brooks. We always are reactionary, right? And so we saw the mayor get on there and talk about the parents and what should be done. Before I ask my question, I first want to make a statement. As y'all all been saying, trauma, right? Let's do the grandmama who is 47 or 50, you understand? She is hurt and broken. Her child is 30, right? She's the mother that you're blaming. She's also a victim of the war on drugs, right? So her baby is the 9, 10-year-old and 11-year-old that's carjacking you. So you can't just deal with the baby without dealing with, as Tyrone always said, the root. Don't pick the fruit if you're not gonna deal with the root. So I just wanna say that to combat the parent comment. The parent needs parenting, all right? My question is this. Reactionary, we can always deploy officers to a spot that now is trending in the news. With 12,000 officers, 3,500 police vehicles, why aren't the deployments being had to the hot spots? We in the streets every day. It's only 10, 12, 15 documented hot spots in this city. How come that same effort is not being deployed to those hot spots? We in them every day. Auburn Gresham, Lawndale, East, West Garfield. Downtown, we know Louis and Gucci need some support, but what about our babies? And so who is in charge of deploying the officers? And how come we don't have a heavy police presence in our neighborhoods that need it most? Yeah, I know the smash and grabs are happening downtown, but people are dying in the blocks. When we was young and when y'all was mass incarcerating us, all the blocks was hot. How come there are no blocks that are hot now? That is my specific question. Why aren't the officers being deployed to the proper places?
Glenn, you want to take that?
Put it on Glenn.
I'm gonna put it right on Glenn. Glenn Brooks is the director of the CAP program for the police department.
So a couple of things here. Let's talk about deployments is really done through the Bureau Patrol, but I will say this, and I know many people in the audience and on the fellow panelists. I can tell you, we have deployed in every single neighborhood at different points in this city. I have walked and worked in every single one of those neighborhoods that you mentioned. And there's been times we've had police there. Here's the most important thing. This problem isn't a police problem. Everyone keeps asking, why don't we send more police? How do we get more community to reach out to our neighbors and our children? The fact is, we are not going to arrest our way out here. And for us to always come back and say, and that's not fair. We don't always come back and say we need more police, because there's many people who've said on this panel and today that we need a multitude of investments. We need a multitude of services, whether that is housing, whether that is jobs, whether that is mental health. And as we start to look at this problem today, we have to remember we are going to have to come together to solve it.
Right.
And when I say come together, this is what I really mean. When you come, you have to be willing to work with the people, not only in this room, but in the neighborhoods. Don't come with another solution, come with a helping hand and support for those who are there doing it today. We don't need 20,000 new solutions. We need help with the solutions that we have today. Now, here's the second thing. When we come together, we have to respect everybody's contributions, because they're going to be different. It's important to respect, just because it's not the idea that you think is going to work, or you don't think that this should be the one we should lead off with. That's okay. Don't worry about that. Worry about supporting the community and its efforts to make it better, because that is what we are all there to do. So the question isn't about deployment. The question is, how are we coming together to resolve it? Now, let's just also remember this. Downtown was a night. One night, 4-hour period. The rest of the time, we are in every single neighborhood across this city.
Ma'am, do I have room for feedback? I have a follow-up question. With all due respect, my follow-up question, because I agree with you that we need collaboration. My specific question was, with 3,500 vehicles and 12,000 police, we don't need a National Guard. We don't need none of that talk. My question is, why isn't the police being deployed specifically to sit in those target areas? Where are the vehicles? When we ride by the police stations, there are graveyards of vehicles not being used. So my question is, if they're not exactly sitting on Lawndale, exactly sitting in East Garfield, West Garfield, Austin, where are they? That's my specific question. How do we get us and officers in the proper places to prevent, not respond, but to prevent death?
Yeah, a couple things here. Number one, they are there. Every weekend, every night, there's deployments within those specific communities that you outlined. But here's the most important thing, is your second part of that question, is how can we get us to be in those places to prevent it? Now, we sit down with a number of outreach organizations. We've sat down with a multitude of different organizations. And I know that there are, including your organization, that have met with the different commanders to sit down to say, hey, we need to be here. Now, here's the most important thing, is that we respect our contributions. Because there's moments that we're going to be able to be in the same space, and there's going to be moments when that space is better served by your efforts than the police department. And there's going to be moments when the police department's efforts are going to be more needed in that particular spot. But if we work together, we will be in those spots and are in those spots. The larger question is, what is contributing? Why are these kids, why are our people coming out and committing these acts of violence over nonsense?
Okay, next question, please.
How you doing? My name is Quinn Mcdonald. I am the co-founder of an organization called Watch Guard Chicago. Many of you up here know who I am, and we've worked together on this subject. It's not necessarily more so a question, but more so a suggestion based on solutions. I hear a lot of conversation based around gun violence. We always attach gun and violence together. However, I'm concerned that we talk in silos. Economics and violence needs to be together because that's the precursor to gun violence. Your trauma, mental health, that health care and violence needs to be wrapped together. Education, violence needs to be connected. Our children are suffering from poor educational systems. Nutritional violence needs to be connected. We have food deserts in our community. Aldi's right on the west side just closed down, open on Monday, gone on a Tuesday, and now the elders and the people in the community are looking like we have no food, we have nowhere to eat. We have to go all the way somewhere else that I may not necessarily feel comfortable to get food. And to understand that it's not just gun violence. Everywhere in the news, as my elder mama said earlier, and I use the term mama and baba, so forgive me, but I heard you say earlier, speaking about media and perception. Media does skew our perception, or it helps form our perception, which ends up turning into our realities. And so what we do is we take gun violence and we think that is the core issue. And the fact of the matter, it is not. It is stacked. We have economic, educational, nutritional violence. It leads up to gun violence. Ultimately, what you see in is trauma. Now, it takes many ingredients to bake a cake. So, I say that to say this, with all due respect, you can't have a traumatized police department thinking it's gonna fix a traumatized community. You can't. Go ahead, boy. The department is dealing with issues itself. So there needs to be healing within the department itself. They're dealing with systemic issues themselves that has to be addressed. The city hall is dealing with those same issues. We have finger pointing, and I'm gonna just put it out there, you can't have the mayor, black woman, Kim Fox, black woman, David Brown, black man, all in higher positions of this city, and they beefing. And everybody want to point the finger at each other. People want to point the finger at Kim without necessarily pointing the finger at themselves. How do I fix this and we close the gap? Another is the most important, and then I'm gonna leave it alone. You have to have the youth at these conversations. See, the issue is we're uncomfortable with them. If you don't have, and I'm gonna just put it out, if you don't have the guys that's out here doing the carjackings, that are the shooters, that are the ones dealing, if you don't have them at the table, like, what do you need, what's going on? What we do is we talk over their head and around them, and we don't include them in the conversation to say, what's up? And what we do is overlook their intellect, because truthfully speaking, though it's criminal, they're outthinking us all right now.
Thank you.
So we have to go ahead and connect with that and figure out how do we bond and connect and leverage that intellect and then transform it and direct it overall. And last thing, community is important. You cannot be upset at what's happening on your block and in your neighborhood if you don't even know the neighbors on your block. They have a community in a village. We have to get back to this. So I take this room as that village. I seriously do. This is about a becoming village. And that right there is going to be is solution based. Once you have village, once you have neighborhood, and once you start internally in the house, it's going to come out externally and form everywhere else. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Very wise. So we got one more, let me have one more comment, and then we need to summarize everything.
We have two.
We got two?
But
Okay,
then
two.
we have to close out because we have to be out of this room at 12:30.
Okay.
Well, thank you, State Rep Lashawn Ford. I've worked with just about quite a few people on this panel. And when I look at the violence, right, and deal with it every day in these streets and communities, violence need a job. That has been said a number of times. This sister gave statistics about ages 8 to 24 unemployment rate. I can't even imagine if I lived, me, a formerly incarcerated individual, lived back in the time where resources is scarce. There's no more super transfers. Hold on, y'all know who old enough knows something about that. That means that I didn't have the police looking at me crazy when I got on the plane and explored my community. I explored my city. Black kids don't even feel like they can explore their city. And it's too expensive to even explore your city. So they come down there, they meet, because guess what? The parks are closed. The church basement is closed. There's no more game rooms, treasure chest closed, Mac Victor's, the Woods Theaters closed, all gentrification. You talking about them having something to do where they can watch white girls, white boys from Lollapalooza pack downtown and assault officers.
Speak on it.
And don't get arrested like our children. Don't get scrutinized and criticized like our children. Nor do they reach out to the reputable people to help them intervene so that it don't always look like a Gestapo move every time our children show up. That's unacceptable, just the whole optics. With all this black badge, black brass up top, the optics. Man, hey, y'all, all you community people that Glenn sit in the room with, he don't call us one time and say, hey, man, all y'all line up, man. They guys we here and they coming downtown. Don't give us no intel about our kids so we can preempt things before you arrest them. Okay. Give us an opportunity. Don't say use your community and don't call us. That's hypocrisy. I'm not in this for no metrics and no political expediency. Our women and looking at people like Angela crying in funeral home with their child, man. That's real.
Let me ask you something. If we call a youth summit, I appreciate you all being here because it's real. Y'all called me, so I write about this stuff.
No, we're not calling you.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead.
We don't want to argue. Let's ask a question.
Again, I wasn't finished.
If we call a youth summit, would you help us put it together?
The youth summit that's easy. Listen. I'm not calling these young folks to organize with a bunch of boring old folks for nothing. So, listen, y'all gotta get it. When I walk these streets, just like we give our soldiers millions and billions of dollars to give to Taliban fighters who kill American soldiers, to be allies with them. In our government, our tax dollars, we give them billions of dollars to learn the terrain, to walk, so they can take our troops through the provinces and the terrain to prevent terror. Look at the billions that our government spend to prevent terroristic effect to come back in our shores, right? They give it unapologetically. They do that. When I roll in these streets with these shorties, even though I have no government funds or none of that, there ain't no magnificent mile money coming to keep our children from down there looting. I do just this. Well, y'all hungry. See, when you do this here, I keep a pocket full of this. This come from donations. Man, I'm hungry, big homie. Y'all crazy, man. Y'all don't understand this is a style. A gun is essential uniform. A gun is like Gucci belt, Louis Vuitton purse, red bottoms. Y'all don't call us to the table to coach and educate because y'all think y'all degreed and y'all got it. I spent 21 years in a 9x12 cell. And I studied every character type in prison that was coming back to the communities that they released them back with no reformation.
That's right.
With no accountability. Now we come along, man, we not even allowed to go into schools. We're not allowed to go into school because our politicians passed legislation that prevent these kids from interacting with people who've been through it. I learned how to be a gangbanger in prison. I mean, school pipelines to prison. I learned how to be a gangbanger because your mama drop them off real quick. I'm going to get out of there. But you want to get to use something together, do like Willie Wilson do with grown folks. If grown folks lining up for $20, what do you think children gonna do? Come on, quit playing like this is not a material world, that the budget of our police and our law enforcement, our prison system is greater than the budget for us to prevent our children from going to prison. We ain't got to, we know the numbers. We keep playing these games of having meeting to meet. The lady said, the young lady, our mother over there said, I'm tired of these same old meetings. She's been doing this for 40 years. She's a specialist. She tell y'all they in problem. But we never at the table. The mayor created a task force about re-entry, and she only selects certain people she want to select to be at the table. That's not out in the street with me. I guarantee you they not. So you can't keep using the same people, the same. It's easy to stop looting downtown, but y'all don't want to hear that because we so pro-police. We don't defund that. Why would you defund the police? Why would you even talk like that? But we can't reallocate funds. Stop using the political charged word. That's what make y'all fight each other, because they want to hold their grabs on our hood and I stand on our necks. That's how they feel out there, Rep. The shorties feel that way. They'll tell you that. We need to create something where we bridge the gap. The Snellings, we've had the conversation. I even had a few conversations with Joyce, and Glenn always on the front line with us. Them don't have no issue with those brothers because they will tell it like it is. But all I'm saying is we have to be more inclusive. We can't wait to have a Sister Angela on the pound after her child got here. You make that important now. Right. It has to be important for every child in this city. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, I know time is of the essence. My name is Minister Omari Jahi Aden. I'm the co-founder of the Toma Nation Temple of Mercy Association. One of our goals is that we want to re-educate youth and young adults to develop positive moral values as an alternative to delinquent behaviors. And this is the important part, because you can't rebuild a community without first rebuilding the minds of the residents of the community to meet the responsibility of maintaining that community's image. It's important. This is why the mind of our people is what we need to really focus on. Not the effects. The root is the sickness of the mind, the emotional effect, the PTSD. Sister Angela has PTSD that needs to be dealt with. I've taken a course that's being held by the Church of Scientology, and we know how much dirt is on that church. And so it's got a stigma on it. Don't nobody want to deal with it because of all that stigma. But I'm telling you, I took this class called auditing, and it deals with a therapy session that helps you, without medication, get rid of the emotional trauma that you've been dealing with, all of us been dealing with. He said the police department, he said all of us in the community, all of us have this challenge. And I gave the book to State Rep, and I want to give him this because this QR code will give you more information about it.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Black newspaper, Chicago Leader.
Let me get it. I want to thank you all for coming. We have to end now. We are at our maximum time, so we're going to hear from Representative Mary Flowers to close out. Thank you. And we're going to hear, our representatives are going to close this out. Mary Flowers first, please.
This has been a very informative meeting. I must say, in the 36 years that I've been in office, this is the most informed meeting that I've been to because of the voices from the audience that had the opportunity to speak. And I would suggest that if there's going to be a panel, these gentlemen should be a part of the panel. I just want to bring up I had a lot to say, but I'm going to try to make it brief. I introduced a resolution last year, and I wanted the Marshall Plan and the Kerner Report to be combined. So the very thing that you're talking about here, we could have discussed. The Kerner Report it's been read by millions of people, but it's never been acted upon. Now, the Marshall Plan, on the other hand, after World War II, we know how Europe was rebuilt. We also know what happened in 1968 in regards to the West Side and the South Side. But we know that there has not been a Marshall Plan in place for that. Those are things that need to be on the table. When you talk about mental illness, 1619 is real. And stress is passed down from birth. It is inherent from generation to generation. So these police officers, they, as someone stated earlier, are dealing with stress as well. And so you're dealing with people that's been stressful and you're stressful, all kinds of people. Because look at how America was built and how our families and generations was torn apart. All these things matters. But there's a couple more things that I wanted to say, but we have to get rid of, I just want to say one other thing in closing. Years ago, I was invited to Washington, D.C. by George W. Bush, is at the Sun. And so at the time, the Afghanistan war was going on. And so, not the Afghanistan war, the women in Afghanistan was being abused. And so I remember in the Situation Room, they said to us, now when you go to Afghanistan, do not go there with your preconceived notions about what you think needs to be done. When you go and come into my community, look for me. Ask me. Ask the men in my community what needs to be done. And then we can work together. But I'm looking forward to the panel. I'm looking forward to the next conversation. And thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for coming today. Gentlemen, for your input, and everybody on the panel, and the moms. My heart breaks. There's a lot of stuff that's been said today. There's a lot of information that the co-chairs and I are going to take back and continue the discussion. Discussions need to continue throughout time so we get better and we improve along the way. I support the police. I think we need more funding, not less. And I think mental health training and access to mental health should be included in all communities, white, black, downstate, upstate. Mental health is a huge issue. Education is a huge issue. And I could say a lot more too, but I think we all need to work together, again, including the police and the communities, to come to a solution. The police, what you said, community is the police and the police is the community. So we need to all work together, and education is a huge aspect too. So thank you everybody for coming today.
Thank you so much. I want to thank UIC for hosting us and being a partner, and thank the entire panel for being here. As you know, this is not about pointing fingers. Everyone was on, I guess, too good of behavior because there was no finger pointing. I think what we've shown here is that we really want to work together. And it's critical that we hear from those on the ground in the community who's putting in the work, like Tyrone Muhammad and ex-cons and all the people that were able to speak today, including the panel. We also want to make sure that it's clear that families in this city and this state deserve a comprehensive plan. And that's what we plan to do with this task force. I want to thank Speaker Welch for understanding that we have to have a task force that brings people together. And that's, in my opinion, we accomplished that today, and we will continue to do that. But what I heard today, and I've had my problems with police, but what I've heard today is really not a police problem. We are dealing you guys a bad hand. The schools are failing, government is failing, and you guys got to deal with it. What do we want you to do? So we need to be partners in the worst way. And I heard someone say that parents are the ones that need parenting too. When I hear people wanting to prosecute parents and say parents need to, I just think about in this city and this state, those parents are products of CPS. And they failed those parents that now are the parents of the children that you have to arrest, that have to be in the Department of Juvenile Justice. So I support, not only do I support law enforcement, but I support the humanity of people. And it's our job when we go to do budgets. Leader Flowers always talk about how it's a moral document. And we have a choice at this point whether or not we're going to continue to ignore the red flags that the young people are constantly putting up. And so law enforcement, I hope that we could work with State's Attorney Kim Foxx's office. I hope that we could work with Chief Judge Evans' office, because even in our own homes, we believe in discipline. We believe in consequences, because it always makes for a better person. And so let's work together. I want to thank you, Hermaine, Emmy-nominated person of Indigo. Thank you very much, and thank everyone for being here.